This is going to be a quick video review of my latest action camera, which is the Sony HDR-AS15. It's a very small little camera. Unfortunately, it does not stand up by itself. It has two microphones up front. Has a really nice, easy to use menuing system here, which I'm not actually going to demonstrate. I'm just going to talk about the things I like and don't like about the camera. I don't like cameras that need a case. I have an Air Ion Pro, which I bought just before they came out with the Air Ion Pro 2, which is a great little camera, and I like that it's waterproof without a case. The Sony needs a case, and when you put the camera in the case and then record video, the audio is terrible. It's very, very, very muffled. So that's how you have to mount the case. It comes with a meager set of two, one curved and one straight mounting brackets, into which this little thing slips. Not very easily, but it does have an 1¼ 20 tripod mount on the bottom, which is a great feature. I wish GoPro had that. So, as I said, the audio is terrible in the case, but it's excellent out of the case. The Air Ion audio is very muffled in or out of the case. The GoPro in this skeleton case here, where it was a lot of holes and air, the audio is quite good. And I'm talking when I'm riding my bicycle. The thing I like about the Air Ion a lot is that to start recording video, you slide this switch on the top here forward. I'm blocking my own light here, but you slide this switch forward and it starts recording. You slide it backward, it stops recording. And it does vibrate a little bit to tell you. It vibrates once when you start recording and twice when you stop recording, so you actually can feel that in your handlebars if you have the camera mounted on your handlebars. So this is great. This camera starts recording when you push this button in the back. And even though you can hear it and you can feel it when you push it with your hands, when you're out on the trail, you cannot tell whether or not you push that button hard enough to make it start recording. And there is a little red LED somewhere on the top here that I cannot actually see, that blinks on and off. The GoPro has LEDs all over the place. It's got them on every single side you could possibly be looking at, so you can tell whether or not you're recording when you record it. But the one thing I do like is one button starts recording, same button shuts it off, and it'll automatically power off after you're done recording. The GoPro has a similar feature where you can turn on one button recording, where you push this button and it'll start recording. So now it's recording, but then you have to hold the button for a little while for it to stop recording, which when you're riding your bike along on a trail is not very convenient to do. So I'm just going to show, there it's recording. That does nothing. So you have to hold it in to make it shut off. The beeps are nice, but the having to hold it in while you're riding your bike down a rough and rugged trail is terrible. So this is just terrible. You can't tell, especially if you have gloves on, whether or not it started recording or not. You can't see the LED, and the only way to tell for sure is to look at the screen here, which is pretty dim, especially in this lighting. And now you can see that it's recording, but if you hit that, it stops recording. I have it in a mode where it shuts off automatically after just a few seconds. My favorite place to mount a camera is really the GoPro chest mount. That's my favorite mount of all for the perspective you get while you're riding your bike. My second favorite place to mount my camera is using this RAM mount. And what I can do is put this camera on here and mount it like that, and With the RAM mount, you can adjust it up and down, and you can tilt it however it needs to be and get it just right. It's got a lot of flexibility. So that is my favorite mount. If I mount my GoPro on here, it is too tall really to fit on here very well. Well, I guess it can fit on here. No, it can't. It hits the brake levers. So what I have to do is rotate it around to the bottom, which is fine. That's a good perspective, and I don't have any issue doing that. And the GoPro also has an upside down kind of rotation thing. It's not a sensor. The Air Ion has a sensor that can tell whether it's upside down or vertical, but it also detects if it's sideways or this way. And while you're riding your bike down a trail, if you have that enabled and you turn on the camera, sometimes it thinks the camera's like this when it's like this. I've never seen it invert the video totally, but a lot of times you get the sideways video, which is just a strange resolution and just terrible. So anyway, I do not like the auto rotation of this camera. However, the Sony does not have auto rotation. When I mount this on here, again, it's pretty much too high. It'll hit the brake levers. I have to mount it upside down, which is fine. Then I definitely can't see the red LED at the bottom of the camera, and I have no idea whether I'm recording or not. I can probably mount this over on the other side and be able to like look over and see if the LED is going or not, but in general I am not happy with this camera. One of the things I do like about it is it takes 720p 120 frame per second video, which I don't think either of my other cameras do, and that is pretty cool because it's very, very high speed slow motion and it looks awesome. The good thing about the Sony is it does have a very easy to use menuing system, but to use it I got to take it out of the case, which is kind of a pain in the ass. The GoPro has a very hard to use menuing system, which is fine, but it takes some getting used to. You got to click one button and the other, and I can't ever remember what to do, but you can set things right on the camera. This camera, unfortunately, you cannot set via any controls. You're just screwed. You have to set that using software on your PC. I also have a Mac, and I have not been able to get the software for this camera to work on a Mac, just a PC. One other thing I'd like to talk about is time-lapse. This camera does time-lapse it'll take one picture every 5 seconds, or every 10 seconds, or every 30, or every 60 seconds. And in my experience, if you're trying to like capture people walking or capture people at a construction site working, the best kind of interval is about half a second. No greater than half a second. So this is 5 seconds is the slowest it'll go. And so that's good for clouds going by, but it's not good for people doing things at all. So this camera can also do time-lapse. I haven't used it for that. So I have used time-lapse in this, and I don't believe the interval goes below 1 second, but I could be wrong. However, this creates separate images. I believe the Sony does too, and you have to piece them together into a movie. I had a JVC Addiction, which I believe when you did time-lapse actually made a movie, and you didn't have to go do it with software, which is really a pain in the ass. I don't know why they don't just have your time-lapse make a movie all by itself. So the menus on this are quite easy. The menus on this in the software are quite easy, but there's no way to change anything on the camera outside of using a PC. They do have a Wi-Fi version of this, which appears to have way better exposure and also supports Wi-Fi. So you can change the settings using Wi-Fi. And you can change the settings using Wi-Fi And you can start and stop and control the camera, the Sony, using Wi-Fi. But if you're out on the trail, are you going to pick up your iPhone and type in your passcode, go to Play Memories, hit reconnect? Of course, it's not connected because it's not on. I don't know if I start recording, if it will come on. I'll say reconnect. No shooting devices connected. Reconnect. Let me go to my settings. Settings. Wi-Fi. Okay, the camera is showing up here. I don't know if you can see that or not. The camera is showing up. It's direct something. So now it was connecting to my house's Wi-Fi. So now I'm currently trying to connect to the camera, and I am connected to the camera. So now I'll go into Sony's Play Memories application. I wonder if I turn it sideways if it'll work. And you can actually see what the camera is shooting at. And it's pretty, I don't know if you can tell. I'm going to flip the camera around. I'll point the camera at the phone. And it's pretty real time. And then from here I can actually hit stop. And the camera will stop recording, but you can still see. So this would be good for lining things up on your helmet. But, oh, did I mention that? Lining things up on your helmet. These things, you're going to have to get them right on the curvature of your helmet. Because the camera is just going to screw down onto that like that. So whatever angle your head is at, you're going to have to make sure that you don't make a mistake and get this on your helmet in the correct orientation, or on whatever flat surface you might be mounting this on. So there is no tilt either side to side, because my helmet's always crooked on my head, or vertically like this way. So you have to put that thing on in the right position, and then you probably have to try to figure out how to make your helmet stay straight. So anyway, I am totally not impressed with the Sony. My favorite really out of all these three cameras is the Ion Air Pro, because of the ease of operation of this switch for on, this switch for off, as compared to this where you have to hold it to shut it off, as compared to this where you can't tell if you turned it on or off. This wins hands down my favorite camera. This is my second favorite camera. This I'm not thrilled with or happy with at all. A couple things I forgot to mention is the Air Ion takes a micro SD card. So it's one of those tiny little cards, which I hate because I am very worried I will lose it. It's so small. If you take that out and drop it, you're never going to find it. That's another thing. This does not have a replaceable battery. The other two cameras have replaceable batteries. This one has an SD card, standard size SD card. Much preferred because much less likely to lose it. Did I mention that this one does 720p 60 frames a second, and it's not in slow motion? This one does 720p 60 frames a second, also not in slow motion. This does 720p 60 frames a second, but it is slow motion. No sound, just slow motion, which I don't know why they did that. It's terrible. This does have the ability to record 1080p at 60 frames a second, but the files are so big it really slows down your computer. So if you want to record action at 60 frames a second, you better have a very fast computer. Oh, let me go back to the memory cards. So micro SD. I hate where these. This is another thing I don't like about this camera. Is I think the micro SD card is under here. Yes, it is. And this takes Sony and non-Sony cards. And when I've put this micro SD card in here, sometimes it seats okay, sometimes it does not. So there's something not great about having the ability to do dual type cards in this thing. The other thing is, this is a really flimsy little piece of plastic to get to the charger. Micro SD, standard SD. Removable rechargeable battery, removable rechargeable battery, and non-removable rechargeable battery. So if you actually had to go out and shoot for days or something and wanted to replace the battery in here, you can't. You have to have a way to charge this one. So that's a big disadvantage to this one for some people. Not for me, actually. I haven't run into that kind of trouble. So let's go out and test these three cameras and see how good the audio sounds, and especially how bad the wind noise is when I'm going at about some sort of bicycle speed. So I am now recording with the Sony in the case. I'm going to stick it out the window. I was actually going like 30 miles an hour, which is faster than what I really wanted. Now I've removed the Sony from the case. I bet you can hear the audio a lot better. But let me stick it out the window, and first let me slow down here. I'm going to go in a street that's a little, I can go a little slower on. So this is the Sony out the window, no case. This is the Air Ion Pro. I'm going to stick it out the window. It doesn't have a case. I'm going about 20 miles an hour. That was the Air Ion Pro. Okay, the last camera I'm going to try is the GoPro Hero 2. And I'm going to shut off my blinker. And I am going about 20 miles an hour. This is what this camera sounds like. 20 miles an hour. So the Sony did have the best video quality. It has the best audio quality out of the case, but inside the case, the audio quality is terrible and the wind noise is terrible, and it has the worst operation because you can't tell whether you've started recording or not. The GoPro is kind of second best all around, although it does have the best audio when you consider that you need to put the Sony in its case to use it. The Air Ion had the worst video, but in sunny conditions and in the woods, it's really not as bad as it looked today. It had the worst video if you consider the Sony outside its case, but if you put the Sony in its case, which is how you have to use it, it was probably the second best audio. It was definitely the best for wind noise, and definitely is the easiest to use operation with that slide switch. And it's really my favorite camera.